Good afternoon and welcome to the inaugural launch of Breaking the Mold. My name is Skip Weissman, and Breaking the Mold is a new, simple, and dynamic way to transform employee engagement at any workplace. Again, my name is Skip Weissman, one of your presenters for today. I'll be hosting the event with a couple of my colleagues. I'll be moderating and presenting with my two Breaking the Mold North American colleagues, Jackie Friedman and Doug Brown. And this is truly an international effort, as the Breaking the Mold program comes direct from across the pond, as they say here in the United States and North America, from the program's founder, who's in the United Kingdom, and our Breaking the Mold practitioners here in North America hail from both the United States and Canada. So again, welcome to today's webinar. We appreciate you joining us from wherever you are, be it your lunch hour, as it is for me in the Northeast United States, and also Jackie. And for some of you, it's late breakfast out on the West Coast, and if you're across the pond, it's dinner hour, and if you're in the Asia-Pacific region, it's late into the night or early morning, and those of you are really dedicated to improving employee engagement in your organization. So welcome, everybody. We're excited to have you all here, and we have a full hour planned, as you can see from our agenda, as Doug, Jackie, and I will be reviewing for you some definitions and distinctions about employee engagement that we believe is vitally important for everyone on today's webinar to understand, so that you can really make the most out of your employee engagement efforts regardless of how you do it. Just understanding these distinctions, we found, can raise your engagement levels. Secondly, we're going to share with you the very latest research on employee engagement and the value in doubling down on your employee engagement efforts. Then we're going to introduce you to the concept of what we call breaking the mold, which we have found to be the simplest and the most effective way to implement an employee engagement initiative. And we'll tell you why as well. We'll also give you the background of this concept, how and where it was discovered, and some of the results it has achieved by reviewing actual client case studies that have made a significant difference in the organizations in which it was implemented. We also have a couple of poll questions for you to make this somewhat interactive, as interactive as possible. And we also have 3 free gifts and resources for you at the very end. We will also be leaving about 10 to 15 minutes or so at the end for questions that Doug, Jackie, and I are happy to answer for you once we get to that stage of the program. So as we go through the presentation, take some notes, develop your questions, and you can either type them into the question box, or you can click to raise your hand on your webinar screen, and when the time comes, Jackie will recognize you, unmute your lines, and you can ask your question directly there. So very briefly, I'd like to introduce you to the Breaking the Mold North America team. And one of the 5 of us that you see on the screen should have been the ones to invite you to today's event, either through a direct email, a Facebook post, or an invitation through Facebook, a Twitter tweet, or maybe even some other form of social media platform that has not yet even been invented. Who knows? So we have Jacob Snide. Jacob is from Toronto, Ontario, in the center of the screen. His company is called the Momentum Group, and we have to all say thank you and credit Jacob with bringing all of us together as Breaking the Mold facilitators, because it really was Jacob's passion for the power of the Breaking the Mold process that brought us all together and brought us to you today. Sebastian Mueller works the Quebec area of Canada with his company and surrounding territories, and he brings a special gift of being multilingual, speaking both French and English, some skill that I do not have and probably will never possess. So Sebastian is our peak performer there, and we love the folks north of the border, our Canadian neighbors. One of your other presenters today you're going to hear from frequently throughout the hour is Jackie Friedman from Milford, New Jersey, and her company is Delta V Strategies. And again, I'm Skip Weissman, a native of New Jersey, but now based in Poughkeepsie, New York. My company is Weissman Success Resources. And between the 5 of us on the screen, we have about 100 years of leading organizational experience, or working with organizations to improve leadership and workplace performance. Now, I've waited to introduce Doug Brown because he will be picking up the next part of the presentation. Doug is based in Kitchener, Ontario. His company is Engaged to Perform, which I love that name of his company. It really says what he does. And he works throughout the Ontario, Canada region and surrounding territories. And so with that as the introduction, let me go to Doug, who's going to kick off the main content part of our program today. Doug? Take it away.
Thanks, Skip. I hope everyone can hear me all right. Skip, is that coming through okay?
You are coming through loud and clear.
Okay, well, let me as well welcome all of the participants today. We really appreciate you taking time out to join us. You know, Skip, many times when we talk with business owners and executives regarding engagement levels, we receive feedback that their current engagement levels are very high. Unfortunately, research and analysis by most leading HR consultancy firms such as Gallup or Towers Watson and many others clearly indicates that many organizations really only achieve about a 30 to 40% of highly engaged employees. So why executives perhaps feel complacent and comfortable in their company's engagement levels may be that they don't realize the difference between a satisfied employee and an engaged employee. In fact, if a company pays a competitive wage, offers a range of benefits and good working conditions, they will likely achieve an 85 to 90% satisfaction level, or maybe even higher. However, satisfied and engaged employees are actually quite different. And in this slide, we will outline and review some of these differences. Organizations need to be careful about the benchmarks and metrics they use to measure engagement levels is the first thing I wanted to mention. Examples include asking an employee if everything is okay, or conducting an in-house survey will probably not maybe generate a true feel for the employee concerns. These attempts to assess engagement levels may not give you the reflection of true engagement levels, true feelings, or maybe fear of repercussions, or to be seen as negative, or maybe simply because they're not comfortable in speaking out. Ideally, surveys should be conducted by a confidential third-party professional firm, and even then the questions really need to be geared towards engagement metrics and not satisfaction metrics. So here are a few of the criteria that you can use to help distinguish between an engaged and a satisfied employee. You'll see on the left of this slide, satisfied employees certainly work hard. They complete the jobs and the tasks as required and requested. They interact and communicate with colleagues and peers, and they look after customer needs. However, when we take a look at engaged employees, what we see is that they will voluntarily go the extra mile. They'll act as an advocate for the company in after hours. They're continually offering new ideas and suggestions for increased efficiency and making improvements in the business. They support their colleagues with a team approach. It's a win-win situation. They regularly achieve and surpass company goals, and they also take responsibility to protect a positive work culture. All things very important. So how do we define employee engagement? Well, we would describe this as a strong, positive emotional connection between the employee and the organization that fuels employee motivation, pride, enthusiasm, passion, and commitment to supporting an employee's company in a way that translates into meaningful actionable items that drive bottom line results for the company. Now, Skip, when I refer to meaningful action, again, I'm talking about advocating for the company, willingness to grow, improve, interact, communicate, and connect with peers and colleagues, openly sharing ideas to improve the company, taking initiative in their roles to do the right thing and for the right reasons. And of course, making decisions, taking responsibility within their scope of job responsibilities, expectations, and accountabilities. These things are important because in today's marketplace, most industries are very competitive. And the simple fact is satisfied employees may not be enough to help you address some of those competitive challenges. And we've all seen cases where employees are actually disengaged and maybe even sleepwalking through the day, And of course, that has a major negative impact on things like productivity. In fact, employee engagement is really a very personal decision made by each individual employee to invest their maximum efforts and optimize focus and do the best job they can simply because they want to. And it is driven by emotions and the way they feel, and that's of course based on how they have been treated, related to leadership and management relationships, respect, dignity, recognition, involvement, inspiration, autonomy, all of those factors. So I think that will help give you an overview of the differences between satisfied and engaged employees. Skip?
Great, thank you for that overview, Doug. And now it's sort of up to the folks on the webinar. This is our first interactive poll here, and we're going to call up the poll in just a second. And on the screen you see 9.5 to 1, and that is the ratio that the Gallup organization, which is an international consulting and surveying firm, research firm, Gallup estimates that in world-class organizations, their ratio of engaged to disengaged employees is 9.5 to 1, virtually 10 engaged employees to every 1 disengaged employees. In average organizations, it's only about 2 to 1. So our first poll question of the day that Jackie's going to call up here is, where do you think your organization stands with regard to the ratio of engaged employees to disengaged employees? You have 3 options for this answer. Please choose just one of the 3. Jackie, call up the question.
Oh, I thought it was up. All right, we've got votes coming in. All right, I'm going to close that. Are you able to see that, Skip?
No, I could not see the results, so if you could share the results, that would be great.
35% felt that they were predominantly made up of engaged employees. 39% said satisfied employees, and 26% said not engaged and dissatisfied.
Okay, so about a third, a third, and a third across the board. So I think we've got something for everybody in this webinar as we move forward. And I want you to think, if you think you have high levels of employee engagement, as about a third or a little bit more than that did, I want you to think again, because while much of the research considers an organization to have high levels of engagement if it has if it has 65% or more of its employees engaged, the Blessing White organization, which is an international corporation that does research in this area, reported in its latest report that the employee engagement level in North America is just around 33%. So I think that, even if we think we have engaged employees, we may not have as high a level as we think. So there's a lot of opportunity for growth in employee engagement levels in most organizations in North America today. And when I talk to my clients and prospects, I know Jackie and Doug does as well, we find that there's an awful lot of opportunity to raise the bar in organizations on employee engagement. So Jackie, what do you have for us next?
Well, Doug provided for us a definition of employee engagement, and he said that it was a strong, positive, emotional connection between the employee and the organization that fuels employee motivation, pride, enthusiasm, passion, and commitment. So I just want to throw it out there to say, think about for a minute what your organization could achieve if the vast majority of your employees were truly engaged. These are the people who manufacture your product. They talk to your customers. They solve the majority of your problems. They're the ones that find a lot of new opportunities. They do these things when they are engaged. And when they are truly engaged, you will see that performance does actually skyrocket. But I'm sure that a lot of people honed in on the rest of Doug's definition, where he says that employee engagement, it engages them in such a way that it drives bottom line results for the company. And I'm sure that a lot of ears kind of ticked up when they heard that. So over the next few slides, we're going to tell you about some of the research that's been going on that has established a definitive link between engagement and business performance, and more specifically between engagement and things like sales growth, innovation, quality, earnings per share, customer retention, customer satisfaction, reduced turnover, cost of goods sold, all kinds of things. And later on, Skip's going to tell you how you can get some of these statistics as well, so you don't have to be writing them all down. So our first slide, Skip, I think you went one too far. Yes. On our first slide, we've got a bunch of numbers up here. So the question is, well, what do these numbers represent? Well, 2.6 represents organizations with high levels of employee engagement have 2.6 times the earnings per share growth versus others that are in the same industry. 19.2, high engagement companies improved operating income 19.2% versus a decline of 32.7% for companies who had low engagement during the exact same period of time. So that's an increase of 19.2% versus a decline of 32.7%. 19%. In a 2009 study, shareholder return was 19% higher than the average versus low engagement companies whose share returns were 44% below the average. 2,400, that's actually an annual number. The IES Work Foundation report found that by increasing investment in workplace practices that relate to engagement by only 10%, those organizations increased profits per employee by $2,400 per year. And $100,000, Best Buy, right here at home, Best Buy found that for every 1/10 of a point increase in a store's employee engagement scores, it saw a $100,000 increase in operating income. So those are pretty substantial numbers. Then if we move on, we've got some more numbers for you. $300 billion annually. That is the number that Gallup estimates that actively disengaged employees cost the U.S. economy. The actively disengaged within our organizations cost the U.S. economy an estimated $300 billion in lost productivity. Absenteeism, highly engaged performers miss 20% fewer days of work. Productivity, engaged employees are 20% more productive than the typical employee. Safety, in one particular study, higher employee engagement resulted in a 50% reduction in reportable accidents over a 2-year period. Customer satisfaction, increased engagement was accompanied by a 12% increase in customer satisfaction. And turnover, companies with large numbers of dissatisfied workers experience turnover that is 51% higher than peers within the same industry. And I believe Doug has some more statistics for you.
Okay, thanks very much, Jackie. Yes, here are a few statistics that will help business owners and executives understand the impact of high engagement levels can have on bottom line results, in addition to what Jackie has mentioned, both really from a negative as well as positive perspective. The first stat refers to this whole slide actually is concentrating on ideas and suggestions and innovations. But the first point mentions that 88% of fully engaged employees believe that they can positively impact the quality of their organization's products and services compared to only 38% of non-engaged employees. The second point, at work I know where to go with an idea to improve customer service. That's a comment made by 9 of 10 engaged employees versus 1 in 10 of disengaged employees. Quite a significant difference. The third point, engaged employees and workers are really considered to be 3 times more creative in coming up with ideas and suggestions and improvements in terms of how they approach the business and move the business forward. And finally, 74% of engaged workers agree that they share new ideas with customers versus only 13% of actively disengaged employees. And all of these statistics really speak to the power of initiative and effort in trying to achieve goals and business objectives, taking the necessary steps to ensure that a customer is satisfied, or to deal with some of the difficult problems and issues that arise when you're working in your day-to-day responsibilities. They speak to an employee's feelings and sense of belonging as it relates to their ability and willingness to make a valuable contribution to the organization's clients and goals, and the pride that is felt when they make a difference. Next slide, please, Skip. Okay, now let's take maybe just a closer look at the value of ideas and what we see regarding the generation of ideas by North American companies. When we examine the results and the impact of ideas, we begin to understand how important they can be to business success. As you can, excuse me just a moment. As you can see in this slide, employees do have many good ideas, and you'll see that even further in the upcoming slides that Jackie presents. You know, ideas that can reduce costs, improve efficiencies, or deliver innovative solutions. In fact, with the competitive levels in today's marketplace, simple ideas can not only be the difference, between success and failure, and they can also be the genesis of an engaged workforce. When people are active in submitting ideas, they are committed to the improvement of the organization. They're committed to participation and involvement required for success. So on this slide, you can see that the average number of suggestions per employee is quite different in, say, Japan versus North America, or specifically the U.S. 18.5 to 0.16. The adoption rate of those ideas is 89.7% versus 38%. Those are remarkable differences. And I think just the final point on this slide, if you can look to the bottom point, the net savings per employees. In Japan, they experienced over a $3,000 gain to their bottom line with employee suggestions, that is per employee, versus the United States, which is only, well, less than $400, $334 approximately. That's a tremendous difference. And I'm not sure if any of the attendees today are familiar with the term Kaizen. I did want to mention it. It's basically a Japanese philosophy that essentially means small improvements made on an ongoing basis. And I think in North America, organizations tend to look for big dollars ideas. But as a result, they often underestimate or overlook the impact of a steady stream of ideas, a high level of participation from the employees in generating ideas, and the effect of ideas and contribution has on engagement. So how do we get employees to come forth with their ideas? Well, Breaking the Mold is a proven process that helps cultivate ideas and suggestions and involvement from employees. And a good question to maybe ask within your organization is, how many ideas are we generating and implementing on an ongoing basis, as this can really be a quick indicator of engagement levels. And finally, please remember that these stats that I've just shown only relate to the potential benefits of ideas in relation to engagement. As Jackie indicated, there's several other factors when you look at productivity, turnover and absenteeism, bottom line results, and so forth. Thanks very much. Skip?
Thank you, Doug. It is now time for our second poll question of the day. And Jackie, let's call up the second poll question, which really talks about what is going on with employee engagement in your organization, or I should say what is not going on in your organization because of lack of employee engagement. And in this poll question, you can check all that apply. So there should be 5 options for you in the poll. If they all apply, please check off all of the answers there so we can see what the real issues are that you're challenged with, that you're facing, that you would like to turn around and by raising your employee engagement levels.
All right, we have some voting going on here. All right, last couple people, let's get in there, and we're going to close this out in just a minute. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that.
So what are the big issues out there, Jackie?
All right, let's see. Well, we had 59% people indicated a lack of initiative. We had 41% indicate low productivity, 65% a lack of accountability or ownership, 76% a lack of submission of ideas and suggestions, and 29% a lack of a commitment to excellence. So first, number one was the submission of ideas, then a lack of ownership, then initiative, then productivity, and then a commitment to excellence.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and giving us some insights into what's going on in your organization, or as I said, what's not going on in your organization that you would like to turn around by raising employee engagement levels. Doug?
Thanks, Skip. Yeah, it really is interesting to see the poll results there. We did want to take a moment here and provide a brief overview of the background of our Breaking the Mould founder, Peter Hunter, just to help you understand some of the origins of the process. Peter actually started as a deck officer in the Merchant Navy and then became an officer in the Royal Navy, ironically starting his career with a strict kind of hierarchy and structure. After his master's, he went to the Britannia Royal Naval College as an instruction officer, rising to the head of the department for their strategic systems schools, where he furthered his concept that management is really a two-way street. Eventually, he left to become a consultant working on drilling rigs in the North Sea and also South America, where he formed much of his philosophies and then the methodology for the Breaking the Mould process. And after 8 years with other agencies, he formed Hunter Business Consultancy, which has associates all over the United Kingdom and is expanding into Europe and, of course, now in North America. As a consultant, Peter has really seen firsthand the tremendous improvements that employees can make when they are engaged and accountable and take ownerships of the problems and issues at hand, and then begin to work together to create the improvements and solutions that generate successful businesses. Next slide, please, Skip. So Breaking the Mold really works on the philosophy that every employee wants to do a good job. However, unfortunately, many times there's certain cultural or environmental issues that can prevent employees from putting forth their best effort. Breaking the Mold is an interactive grassroots program that we facilitate that works from the bottom up instead of from the top down, and in terms of direction and the required actions that work toward company objectives. We describe it as a systematic process of engaging staff to contribute their ideas and their discretionary effort to company goals and projects. It's really an entirely new process designed to release the power of the individual at work. Once that power is released, the result will be a significant and often astonishing performance improvement. The Breaking the Mold process is focused on removing the frustrations and obstacles that on a daily basis can cause an employee or anyone to do less than their best. Our core belief is that everyone wants to do a good job, and breaking the mold creates the conditions that allow this to take place. So how does breaking the mold work? Well, we describe breaking the mold process as a system or a focus on what is called transformational change. Transformational change is the process of changing attitudes and behaviors, and a process that removes obstacles to performance to create an environment that allows people to take ownership of their work. Generally, in a business plan or program, changes are made from the top down and are transmitted to the workforce as an established fact. Many times there will be a resistance or sometimes a half-hearted effort to comply with those new directives. The Breaking the Mold process really focuses on ensuring that the workforce owns those changes, and it is this ownership that eventually leads to performance improvement and engagement. So breaking the mold really helps to create an environment that allows engagement to happen. Skip?
Thank you, Doug. You know, the reason Doug, Jackie, Sebastian, Jacob, and I have become so passionate about what Breaking the Mold can do in organizations is that it really is so different from other initiatives that have really been around, you know, the industry for the last 40 or 50 years or so. You know, Breaking the Mold really does not require a lot of hours and hours of certifications like some of these other initiatives do. And it doesn't have that negative effect on creativity, which research has actually shown that some of these other initiatives create in an organization. Creates resistance to creativity and the negative effect on it. So there's been research done by Wharton School professor Mary Brenner and Harvard Business School professor Michael Tushman. They've shown in a number of different industries that creativity is negatively impacted by some of these other initiatives. They actually analyzed the photographic industry and found that an emphasis on process improvement activities were actually associated with significant decreases in exploratory patenting, which happened quite dramatically at 3M when a new CEO instituted organization-wide training on Six Sigma. So all of these other initiatives are top-down approaches where people feel disempowered by the fact these strategies and methodologies are being placed on them to implement this change regardless of what they know or what they believe about their jobs. So breaking the mold, and we call it that just for this reason, because it breaks the mold in this approach. You know, it is that bottom-up approach. It comes from really the main tenet, as Doug mentioned, that people not only want to do a good job, but they have real high-quality ideas on how to do their jobs even better, and something in the work environment and how people are being communicated to is getting in the way. And the Breaking the Mold process provides a unique format for breaking down those barriers, opening the lines of communication, creating a mutually beneficial, long-term transformative environment that allows results to occur in the organization and consistently show up when you consistently work the Breaking the Mold process. Jackie, time for some case studies.
Thanks, definitely. So we have defined employee engagement, and we've looked at some of the research, and now we're going to look specifically at some of the results that have been attained with the Breaking the Mold process. So the first one that we're going to look at is an oil drilling rig, and as Doug mentioned earlier, Peter Hunter spent quite a bit of time working as a consultant on drilling rigs in the North Sea and North and South America. And it was during this time when he actually formed a lot of his philosophy as well as the methodology for breaking the mold. One particular issue that he got involved with involved running liner. So without telling you too much about an oil rig, running liner happens after the well is drilled. a steel liner has to be run so that the hole that they've drilled doesn't collapse on itself. In this particular case, they had to run 6,000 feet of casing, and that's in 30-foot lengths. So each length is screwed into the previous length, and then it's run down into the hole. This particular crew was running at 14 joints per hour. The fastest they had ever done it was 16. The world record was actually 25 joints per hour. But Peter's discussion with the manager there indicated that the manager said, look, this is an inexperienced crew. This is a group of semi-literate jungle Indians who would never even get close to that. And he would be absolutely ecstatic if they could achieve 20 joints per hour. So Peter came in using the Breaking the Mould process and discovered that through their discussions, the crew in fact had everything they needed. They had all the equipment, they had everything that they needed worked, and there was enough casing available. So this one is really interesting because there were no suggestions at all. And yet, the next time that they ran casing, it was their liner, they were running at 18 joints per hour. Most people there assume that that was a fluke. And yet the next time after that, they were running at 24 joints per hour. And this, in fact, was a sustainable change that continued. And while we have a lot of examples from the oil rigs, we've shared this particular example because of how dramatically it actually illustrates the Breaking the Mould philosophy. There were no suggestions or physical changes. And the only thing that Peter could attribute a 33% improvement to was the actual attitude of the people and their attitude on the floor. Instead of standing around and staring off into the jungle, the crew was attentively watching the operation. We could even say they were engaged in the process and what was going on. When the driller was ready for the next joint, it was already there, the crew was ready, and they were working like a team in a way that they had never worked together before. And instead of a lot of yelling and shouting, because the person who does the drilling would yell at this person and they'd have to get somebody's attention, instead of all the yelling and shouting that typically went on, there was barely a word spoken. The crew had taken ownership of the operation. They were engaged in what was going on. And so this was just a really remarkable example because it really shows you what happens when people are engaged in what they are doing. Next up, we're going to take a look at an aerospace engineering firm. And as you can see, or actually I don't think you can see there, before the implementation, there were no suggestions, zero, coming from employees. And what you can see there is at the very first meeting, they generated 35 ideas, 20 were immediately accepted. Over 2 months' time, they had well over 130. And one of them right off the bat was a savings of $1,200 Canadian. And what actually happened in this case is that the suggestions became coming so quickly that they had to increase the intervals between meetings because they didn't have enough time to review and implement everything that was coming from this group. So, it just reinforces the fact that even though your people may not be giving a lot of suggestions now, that certainly, and our experience shows us, that doesn't mean that they don't have them. It means that there's something going on within the organization that's really not creating the environment that makes people engaged enough to really want to come forward or feel comfortable coming forward. In this same company, just as an example, I'll give you 2 additional suggestions that came up out of the 130. One of them that came up was that there was 30% of machine setup time was spent looking for the tools and parts that were required. And somebody suggested that, we should have specific machines. We should have certain of these machines should have their own set of tools so that everything we need is right there and it's immediately available. They estimate that the value of the time saved, this is just the time saved, will be between $100,000 and $120,000 Canadian. Another issue that was brought up had to do with quality. And what was discussed and discovered was that because the temperature on the shop floor was dramatically warmer than the nice cool temperature in the laboratory, they had a much higher rejection rate and rework and scrap numbers than they should have had. because it was discovered that, of course, things, because of the effect of the temperature change, things were not coming in spec or were coming in spec. So they are actually going ahead right now and they are fitting cooling ducts and thermostats in certain areas of the shop floor so that they can get a better handle on the quality. They believe that it's going to actually end up with a lower rejection rate and, of course, less rework and scrap. And at the same time, they're going to have a much better handle on quality and ability to control the quality. So that's just a recent implementation in aerospace engineering. Our next one was an automotive parts distributor reseller. And this one, again, was actually a fairly focused implementation. It was only done in this place in the warehouse. And the one that we're going to just talk about here just quickly is that the very first employee who was approached for their ideas immediately had something. The very first employee that the BTM's consultant approached said, you know what, we have trucks that keep hitting the lamps that hang from the ceiling, because this is a warehouse, remember. And the employee estimated that they were breaking 1 to 2 lamps every single month. So they did some research. They actually did replace the lamps with neon lights, as you can see, that were closer to the ceiling. The warehouse manager quoted $400 as the price for replacing every single lamp. So this is 1 to 2 every month. And they're already seeing savings now of about approximately $9,600 every single year, just with this one suggestion from the first person that they asked. And our last case involves a slightly different kind of company. So this is a small service business, a beauty salon. And the issue that this salon was actually grappling with was the fact that they had to compete against the department stores that were in the city center of this community. And what was happening is that when customers had other errands to do, they would just go into the city and then they would just use the department store salons. And they wanted to figure out how could they actually compete. So the owner implemented Breaking the Mold within their staff. And interestingly, one of the very first suggestions was, why don't we involve clients in this whole process and see how we can have what they see as ways that we could improve their experience. So what they did was they came up with their own process for that, and they decided that for each treatment they would ask one question, and everybody had the same question for some period of time. And for instance, one of the first suggestions was that somebody suggested that they put a second door inside the shop door so that every time somebody opened the door, the heat wouldn't be lost to the street. When they investigated this a little bit further and actually implemented it, it turned out that there was a savings in heating costs, and the added bonus was that the customer who was sitting next to the door didn't get a cold blast, especially on wet hair, every time that door was opened. And what they also made sure to do was that when that client returned, that stylist knew to point out to her that they had implemented that suggestion and to thank her for the suggestion. And the staff meetings and these customer ideas are now a fixture within that business. And as you see, the really wonderful result is that the owner is actually getting ready to open her 3rd salon. When they started this, she had just the one. So that was another really interesting implementation, and in a small service business. So you can see that Breaking the Mold is fairly applicable across industries and across types of companies. Skip. I can't hear you, Skip. Skip?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was muted. I muted myself while you were talking, Jackie. Jackie, I'm here. Can you hear me now? I was talking to nobody because I had muted my mic as you were talking. So, apologize for that for everybody. Here's we want to offer you 3 gifts for attending today's session, and also open up the call to some questions if anybody has anything that you would like to ask Jackie, Doug, or myself. But we have these 3 gifts we want to offer you. The first is a workplace engagement assessment. And you can take the assessment free of charge at this webpage, which is btmengagesemployees.com/assessment-form. And I think it's about a dozen questions, and you can really get your own self-assessment as to where you come out on an employee engagement scale to see where you need to do your most work. The second thing is an employee engagement research document that we've created, and you can get that by emailing Trevor at btmengagesemployees.com, and just put BTM research in the subject line, and Trevor will respond with that link to get that document for you automatically. And the third is Doug, Jackie, and I have decided that we want to really engage the people here that have made the commitment to join us today and offer you a no-cost employee engagement consultation. Because we have limited time because of our other client work, we can really only offer this to the first 5 respondents that want to take advantage of this offer, and we have about 50 or 60 people that were originally on the call today. So for a no-cost employee engagement consultation, what you can do is you can also email Trevor. What this will include is up to 3 hours of in-person or a virtual meeting to discuss your employee engagement issues. After that session, we will give you a written report of our impressions, findings, and recommendations that you can either implement yourself, or if you want guidance and help from one of us, we were certainly happy to discuss what those next steps would look like. So if you would like one of those free, no-cost employee engagement consultations, be one of the first 5 to send your email to Trevor at btmengagesemployees.com. And we look forward to working with you and seeing if we can help you raise your employee engagement levels and begin getting the results for your organization that some of these other clients in these case studies have been getting. And we're really excited about being able to offer this program for the first time ever to companies in North America. So with those gifts, go get them at the links in the web pages that we offered. And we would like now to open the floor to any questions. If you have questions, either type them in the question box or raise your hand in the window in your control panel, and Jackie will recognize you.
All right. Now, we did have a couple hands up here and a couple of questions. Oh, we have a number of questions. All right, here's some hands. I don't know if I'm going to open the lineup. We have a question here from Merle Chambers. Oh, I don't. Nope.
Does Muriel have to be unmuted to ask her question, Yang? Or?
We're trying to do that, and it's not unmuting. All right. I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to just actually unmute everybody for a minute here, and just please be aware that we have it unmuted. And first, we're looking at Merle. No, it's not unmuting. And I know we have some questions out there, too. I'm sorry, everybody. Skip, do you need to send it back to me for any reason? Wouldn't think so. Hey.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, there we go. Merle Chambers. Did you have a question? I think we had a little technical issue there at some point. Merle? All right, we also had one from Yolanda Smith. No. Doug, Skip, you guys are both still there?
It shows as unmuted now. Perhaps you can re-ask the question.
No, we're not. At the moment, we're not getting, they're not, yes, Yolanda is unmuted, but we're not hearing from her. I don't know if we had a technical issue there.
Yeah, it seems like we're having some technology issues. Maybe what we should do is just bring the webinar to a close, but if anybody does have a question, send it to trevor@btmengagesemployees.com, and we will respond via email, since the audio portion of this does not seem to be functioning for one reason or another. What do you think of that, guys?
That's a good idea.
I think that's great, Skip, and we do apologize, everyone, if for not being able to address the questions, but we will take time if they come in via email.
All right, well, if that's all we have, I want to thank everybody for attending today. It's been our pleasure to present this program to you and give you the details on the Breaking the Mold process and how it differentiates from other employee engagement programs and processes, process improvement programs. We're glad you're able to spend this lunch hour with us, or evening hour with us, or morning hour with us, and trust that you learned something that you can take back to your organization to make it an even more engaged workforce. Thanks for being with us, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.